Yeah, hello guys. Am I audible to you all? Yeah, so if anyone is present, just you can ping in the chat. Okay, Simone. Yeah, great. I think few of you have joined. So let's start this class. Okay. So in the last class, what we have seen, we have seen this architecture, right? Like there will be one user. User will send request to our main Python project. In our Python project, what we will have? We will have one main file. From the main file, it will route the request to any of the service file. And from the service file, it will go to the repository file. So what is this repository file? The repository file here, it will deal with any type of data source. Okay, it can be either database, it can be either any file system, it can be array also. Okay? It can be anything. It could be a data source. So the main function of a repository is to connect with data source and to do the operation on that. And along with that, we will have one model. So model is basically whenever the user is sending the request, okay, that is the schema. And but the model is, suppose this repository is going to store the data in the data source. So how the data format will look like? Basically, we define those things in the model. And along with that, we can also keep some validation logics, all those things. Then we will have one env file. So env file is the environment file. Here all the environment values will be stored. Then we will have one core single folder. Okay, so core folder are basically all singleton files. Okay, it will have only one object. So in the core folder, what we can have? We can have one config file. So this config file will basically read all the data from this environment file, and then a logger file. So logger file, it will log any message either in the console, in the file, or in any cloud based on that, but it will log some message, okay, for debugging purpose. So this is our whole architecture. So if we go to the code base, so what we have done till now, so see, we have created one env file. Okay, in the env file, we have kept some of the key value pairs. Then we have also created one virtual environment. Okay, and we have installed some of the dependencies, mostly the python.env. So this package helps to read any value from this env file. Then, as we have told, we have one code folder. In the code folder, we have this config file. So this config file is basically nothing. It will read the data from this environment file. Okay. So from the environment file, it will read all the values. So here we are reading this, and we are using the data class, and we are using this frozen true property. Okay, so that no one can modify this value later on. Then we have one logger file. In this logger file, what we have? We have basically the conditions and the logic written to log what are, suppose the info level log, debug level log, then should log, like if, for example, if the log level is info, then it should print, like for example, from info to critical, it will ignore the debug one. Okay, the least priority one will get ignored. So based on that, which one should log? This is the logic basically. So we have created all the logic here in the last class, and after that we have created one model. So in the model, what we have used? We have used one base model. So basically, we are going to inherit the base model in our model class. And then here we have defined some of the attributes like username, email is active, and default domain. So these are all basically instance variable in data class, and this is how we create a class variable in a data class. Then we have one magic method, that is, or dunder method, that is post init. Specifically it's in data class, so here we will perform some validation logics, all those things here. And then we have some static method and some instance method for the example. So till now friends, anyone any issue? Okay, if there is any issue, just ping in the comment section. Okay. Now we are going to the next section. So in the next section, if we see, based on our architecture, we need to create one service file and a repository file. Okay. So first we'll create one repository file. This repository file basically will connect with any of the data source and will do the operation. Okay. So they're mostly here in this project we are going to use one array, but later on you can replace it with any of the database like MongoDB, PostgreSQL, anything else. So let's create a user repository then. So in the app folder, I am creating another folder, that is the repository folder. So in this repository folder, we are going to create one user repository. User repository.py. So now what is the logic that we are going to implement here in the user repository? So in the user repository, we will do the CRUD operation, okay, like insert, delete, update, all this type of operation we will perform in the user repository on the data source. So first, let's create a class user repository. Okay. So okay, before going forward, friend, if any issue, let me know in the chat section. Okay, now let's continue. So let me tell you one thing, friend, like before continuing in the user repository section, just remember one thing. We can't, like here, basically we will create some method, right? Like to insert, like one is add method to insert the data. There will be some get method to get the data. Then there will be some delete method. All these type of methods will be there, right? But I want some contract, okay, so that user can come here and add any of the method randomly. Okay, so there should be some contract. So what is the concept basically? If I come here, so we have a one repository file, right? Let's say user repository file. So in this file, it will have some contract, like it should maintain or implement some of the methods. Okay, so what type of methods it should implement? All those type of logic should be written in some other class. Let's say that is a base repository class. So what is the concept, friend, here? In the base repository, all the class definition, like the method definition, okay. So what type of method this user repository will contain, all those logic will be in the base repository, and the user repository will inherit this class base repository. So for example, if I give one example, let's say there is a car factory, okay, there is a model of car factory. So what is the main purpose of the car factory? Like, let's say it should build an engine, Okay, then let's say it should build that, let's say tires, let's say if for example. Okay, so this is the function of this car factory, but every company can implement based on their own way, right? Like a car factory can't do, like for example, can't create an aeroplane. So this is not in the contract in the car factory. So any of the car factory, let's say a Toyota or BMW, let's say, suppose they wanted to create car, so they need to create a contract with this car factory. Like what are the functions this BMW factory can implement? So see, the car factory has, they can create tires and engine. So that means the BMW should create only this type of function. It should not create any other function apart from this. Okay. So this is the logic known as the abstract class. So this car, whatever the parent class, this will be an abstract class, and this one is the raw class or the implementation class. So this class will inherit this abstract class and implement all the logic. Okay, so what will happen? Let's say if there is a Maruti. So that means Maruti will also inherit from this abstract class. They will also produce tires and engine, but in their own way. Okay, they can create like the engine of some specification, they can create tires of some specific diameter. BMW will create tire of some specific diameter. That is based on the company, but they must implement based on what is the abstract class is telling. They should create tires and engine, not anything apart from this. So this is the logic we will implement in the base repository. So if any issue with this concept, friend, let me know in the comment section. So now, before going to implement this user repository class, let's create our abstract class, okay, the contract. So in the repository class, I am creating one base repo class. Let's say base repository.py. So here, class base repository. Now, how to create an abstract class? So for that, we need to import from the ABC module. From ABC, ABC means abstract class. Okay, import ABC. This is the abstract class. So we need to inherit from this ABC class. Now this has become one abstract class. Okay, now here we can add some abstract method, or we can also add some concrete method. But mostly in the base repository, we'll add some abstract method here. So how to add one abstract method? So for that, we need to import abstract method from this ABC module. Now we can add some abstract method. So let's say I wanted to create one add method, right? That means the insert method, anything, you can call it anything. So it will have self and the entity. Entity means it can be any entity. It can be a car, user, employees, anything. Okay, so we are calling as a generic term entity. Now here I will do pass only. See, currently there is no implementation right here. It's giving us error because why? A concrete method should have some logic inside this. So since this is a concrete method, it's expecting some code, some logic to be written here. But what about abstract method? In abstract method, we don't have any logic written inside the method. So how to define this as abstract method? Just decorate it with this abstract method. Okay. Now here what you can do? You can just write here pass. Okay, no need to write any implementation, but this will now tell that this is an abstract method. The logic will be implemented on the child class. The child class will implement the logic. Okay. So apart from this, let's create another abstract class. Let's say if I create def get all. Okay. So basically it will return all the users. this also pass, and let me decorate it with abstract class. Sorry, abstract method decorated. So now we have created one base repository class. Okay, so now this is a factory. Okay, so this is the blueprint. So what does the base repository will do? It can add and it can get all the users. Okay, now what we are going to do? We are going to import that here first. So import. So what we are going to import? We are going to import that base repository class. So import. So where is the base repository class? That is inside app dot repository dot base repository. Import. So what is the class name here? Base repository. So we are going to use this class. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I have written in a React way or JavaScript way. So in Python, basically it will be an opposite. So basically, it will be the form will be in the beginning. From app.repository.base repository import base repository. So how to inherit? So the same way we have to give a bracket and then we can tell base repository. Okay, now the user repository is inheriting from the base repository. Okay, so that means this user repository must implement this method first. It should implement this method, and after that it can have its own other method, but it's mandatory to implement this method. So let's do that. So let's implement those methods, but before that first create our data source. Okay, so how to create the data source? So we can write dev underscore init. Okay, now here we are going to see, we don't need this. So here we are going to use an array or list. Okay, so what we can say, self dot underscore users. So it will be a list of users, and we can also define the type here. So how to define type? What is the type of this user? It will be of this user model, right? It will be of this user model. So for that, first I need to import that here from app.models.user model, import user, and also we need to import the typing, but here no need, like we can say it will be a list, right? It will be a list of user. So for that, let me import from app dot sorry, not app dot, so it will be from typings module, from typing import list. So now what will be this? This user will be a list of users. It will be now list of this user. Okay, so we have created our data source. So this is the data source. Here we are going to store our data. Okay. Now one thing, let me tell you, what is this? This is known as composition. Composition. So what does this composition means? So in a simple word, if we are creating any reference or data inside the init, that is basically a composition. Means that the list is born here and it will die with the repository. Okay, like if this user class is destroyed, this will also get destroyed. Okay, and once this user repository we create one instance or object, then this will be also created. So the life of this user is dependent on this user class, repository class. This is known as composition. It's not tightly coupled with this repository. Okay, so without this user repository, there is no existence of this user. If this class is created, then this user's list will be created. If this class is destroyed, this will also get destroyed. This is the concept of composition. Okay, now what we need to do? We need to implement those abstract method, right? So now implement the abstract methods. So what are the abstract method available? If we go to the base repository, first one is the add method, right? So that means def. See, we are already getting an option, right? Add. Because why it's auto suggesting? Because we are inheriting from this base repository. Now here first one is the self and second one. So here we have used the generic term entity because this base repository, we can use this base repository with any of the repository. It can be user repository, it can be, let's say, product repository, anything. Okay, so that's why I have created one generic name. But here, since it's a user repository, so here let me call it as a user it only, which is of type user. Okay, so whoever have used TypeScript, they will know this syntax, right? I think they will be familiar with this syntax. Like how we are defining one type. Now, what we can do? So let's say here we will do our validation and we will do and insert the data inside this data source. Okay. So first, what is the logic we need to check? We need to check if the data is coming user, this is of type user or not, right? Let's say if we have some other object with the same, let's say with the same attributes, but that is a different model, so it will not work, right? So first we need to check that. So how to check that? So we need to write if not is instance. So this is instance method checks this object or this variable is an instance or object of this user model class or not. So, okay, so for that first we need to give the instance name, that is user, and then the class. So which class? We need to check with the user class that this user is an instance of this user class or not. That we need to check. If this is not, then what we need to do? We need to raise one error, right? We need to do some exception handling. So here, let's say I will do a type error. So here let me give expected user object or instance, but it got, so what it got, we have to give the type. So type of this user, and we can also give the name. Okay, so what type of instance it's getting, we can also give the name. Okay, so we have handled this validation here. Next, what we need to do? We can add many more validation. Okay, but let's add the logic first. So if this is okay, then we are going to add this user to this user list. Okay, our data source. So what we can do? We can write self dot users dot append. In the append section, we are going to add this user. See, it's not complaining, right? Because this user is a type of this user class, and we are mentioning that only. This user list will contain all the data that will have this user property. Okay. Now after that, basically, we should write the logger. Okay, we should also add the logger. But for now, we are just not adding any logger. We'll add that later, little bit later. Okay, before that, any issue, guys, just let me know in the comment section. Okay, if no issue, I can continue. So say one issue, it's not an issue, it's a warning. Okay, the Pylance is giving that it's telling that the base model is named as entity. Okay, the second parameter, but I'm using here user. So this is not an issue, friend. Okay, so you can ignore this. Okay, you can ignore, or else you can use the same this naming structure, that is entity. That is up to you. Okay, there is no harm anything. So now I have created one repository class. Okay, so I have added the logic also. Now what? So how to call this? So any idea from where to call this? Anyone, any guess from where to call this? Thickness service model. Yeah, so basically it will be service. Yeah, so let's see, if you see the diagram, so we are calling the repository from the service itself. Okay, so model is basically how the structure, how the data will look like. That is also important. But basically, I was asking who will call this repository. So basically, this is a service. Service will call this repository. Okay, we have done with this section. We have created one repository that is interacting with the data source. Okay, this logic is done. Now we need to create one service. So let's create one service now. And let's create one folder service. So let's create one user service here. User service.py. Okay, so let's start working on the code section. So what we will do, class user service. So this is not going to inherit from anything. Okay. Okay, now what we will do, here we will see a concept. So here we will have one init. Okay, so in the init, what it will take? It will take one user repository. Okay, so what will be the type? It will be of type user repository. So I can write. So what we need to do, I need to import that. So from app.repository.user repository, import user repository. So we are taking the user repository here. Okay. Now what we are going to do, we are going to write self.repo equal to the user repository. So this concept, friend, so this concept is nothing. This is the concept of this dependency injection. Okay, so we are injecting the dependency. See what we can do. Either we can do like this, or we can also say like this, right? Self dot, let's say, repo2. Sorry, I have given equal to, let's say, user repository. I can also do this, right? But what will happen? This is a hard coded, right? So this is a composition. Okay, so here I am directly trying to create the user repository, and it's now directly linked with user service. It's now hardly like what it can say, like it's tightly coupled. This is tightly coupled with user service. So like when the user service is created, then only it will be created. When this is destroyed, this will be also get destroyed. Okay, so I don't want this hard coupling. I want to be lightly coupled. So how to do a lightly coupling? So for that, we need to take one variable that of that type, and then I can take the user repository. Okay, so this is the concept, friend. So here I am not creating the object. Okay, so what will happen? Even if the user service dies, this is not dependent on it, right? So it can exist independently. This is the concept of dependency injection, and we are going to use this in FastAPI in many places. Okay. And also, let me tell you, this is also known as aggregation. Okay, so what does this aggregation means? So aggregation means there will be very loose coupling. Okay, so this repo or this user repository, this is not dependent on this user service creation or deletion. First point. And second point, this is owned by the caller. This is owned by the caller. That means whoever is calling this user service, they will own like what is the value it can come here. Okay, suppose if I want to create some other class, I don't want this user repository. Let's say I have created a new repository class, ABC repository. I can pass that also. So this is not hardly coupled. Okay, it's not tightly coupled. I can change that. So this is the concept we are going to use in the FastAPI very much, that is aggregation. Okay, so always try to go for aggregation. Okay, now let's create one method, that is to create a user. So to create a user, what is the method? Let's say def create user. So let's say this will take self. So this, since this is an instance method, we need to use self. So what are the parameters it can accept? Okay, so it can accept username, email is active. Okay, so let's take those. Username, which is of type string, and email, which is of also type string. Then what we can do? So we can do one thing. We can do some validation here also. Let's say, let's see if I have added any validation or not. Okay, say I have added one validation, is email valid. So here we can do one validation. Let's say if not, let's say, so let me first import this user model from app.models.user model, import user. So I can say if not user dot is email valid, and here I will pass the email. Then what I can do? I can raise an exception, right? Raise. Let's say for now I am giving value error, invalid email. Okay, so like this we can raise a exception. If this email is not valid, then raise a exception. But this is not the way to raise exception, friend. I will just show you how to raise exception. But for now, let it be. Now what we can do? Then we can create our object or instance. So now create the user instance. So how to create? Then user equal to, so we have already imported the model, right? User, and here we can pass the value. So see what it's expecting. It's expecting an ID. Okay, so see. Okay, so user class is inheriting from this user base model and it's expecting an ID. So then we need to add an ID also here. So let's be an ID which is of type int. So here we'll pass the ID. Then we'll set the username, that is the username. Then we'll set the email to email. So now we have created our user instance. Okay, now what? Now basically we need to see all the logic is done here. We are checking the validation, everything. Now when everything is fine, we need to call the repository here. So now what we need to do? So since our repository is here in the self repo, so we need to call that. So self dot underscore repo dot. So see, we are getting, there is add method. So add user. Okay. So I've added the user. And then from here I can also return the user also. Okay. Now let's see. So one thing also we can do, we can also create a logger service, right? So for to log. So what we can do, from app.core.logger import app logger. So here after it's get added, we can write applogger.info. Let's say we can say user.email got added. Okay, we are just logging this. So now this is also created. Now what do you think, friend? Who is going to call this user service now? So what do you think? Like now who will call the user service? So what do you think? You can check this diagram and say like who is going to call the user service. Yes, main is going to the user service. See, main is the file that is going to call the different service. Okay, so this is the main file. From here we are calling the different services. Okay, anyone any issue with this? Okay, let's go. So now we have created all our required files. Now the final file is the main file, that is main.py. So here first we are going to define def bootstrap. Bootstrap means this is going to be the starting point of our application and it's going to return nothing. Okay, let's tell the return type to none. Here let me first print application started. Okay, so from here we are going to call the service file, right? So we are going to call the service file. So then we need to import this service file. So from app.service dot user service import user service. So we are going to call this service. But if you see, friend, in the user service there is a concept of aggregation, right? What does this aggregation means? That this is loosely coupled and also this is owned by the caller. Okay, the caller will decide which class instance will come here. So for that we need to use that class also. So this is the main file. Okay, so because main is going to call the user service file, right? So that means main.py is the caller file. So here we need to define the object or the instance of that class. So which instance I need to pass? Here say I need to pass the instance of this user repository. So then I need to add from app.repository dot user repository import user repository. Okay, now first we are going to create the user repository class, user repo. That's this user repository. Okay, so cannot instantiate abstract class based repository get all. Okay, so see what is happening, get all, this is not implemented, right? So what I told, friend, so in the user repository file there should be a contract, right? So there is a contract with this base repository. Like I need to implement every method here. Okay, I can't neglect any one single method. So since one abstract method is still left, I need to add that. Okay, so for now let me comment this. Now see, the error has gone. Now we have created this. Now let's create the service. So here we are going to create the user service. And what does this user service is expecting? It's expecting a user repository. So that means this instance. Okay, so we have created this. Now this service is now created. Now this section is done. I have created one user service. Now how to call this create user? So to call this create user, let me first do something, right? So let me print (20 times) this one. Now let's say first let me create a user Max. So here what I will do, service dot create user, and see here I need to pass. So let's say pass ID is 1, username is Max, and user email is, let's give a wrong email, max gmail.com. Okay, so this is a wrong email I have given, and here let's print main file Max. Let's see what will happen. Okay, before that I need to call this method, right? Bootstrap. So see here we need to call with this if name underscore name equal to underscore main, like this, but for now I am not calling like that, so I am directly calling this bootstrap method. So let's see what is going to happen. So I am using the git bash. So first I need to activate the environment. So how to activate? I need to give source bnb script activate. So see, it's now activated. Okay, now let's run Python, then app.main. Okay, sorry. Okay, now see what is it's giving. It's giving me a value error, invalid email. Why? Because see I have added one validation, right? If the email is wrong, it will give me a value error, invalid email. So it's working fine. And see also the logger is also happening, right? In the logger, that is invalid email. The error log is also happening. So from where this is coming? So this is coming from this model. Okay, see in the model I have added a logger, and here also there is a value error. That's why 2 times it's raising. Okay. Okay, let me clear this. So now let me give a correct email. Then max@gmail.com. Let's see what will happen now. Okay, so what is giving? Raise value error, invalid email. Again, it's giving an invalid error. Why? Let's see. Self.email. Return address. Okay, if there is an address or not, let me go to the main.file. So here username and email. Okay, just let me do one thing. Let me comment this first here. And if I come here, okay, if not, okay, sorry. So what is the issue? So in the user service.file, so it should raise when there is an error. So let me, okay, still it's giving me an error. Okay, it's giving e1 equal to user. Oh, got it. Sorry. Why? This is because here I have already created some of the test email. That's the reason. Now it will work. See, now the application has started. Then this is the info, and see, in the main file the user is created. Here max.com got added. So basically in the service file this is the log, right? This is the info log that is getting printed here. Max@gmail got added. and then I am returning the user that is coming to this main.file, and then I am just printing this main file. Then what I am getting, this is the user with the ID 1, created date time, and the username, email, everything. So now this is working fine. Correct, friends? So I have created a whole flow using this. So any issue till now? Now I will show you how to do the error logging. But before that, any issue till now? Just let me know in the comment section. Okay. If no issue, I am just continuing. Okay, now if I go to this user service file, okay, so let me uncomment this. See, raising a value error, this is not a correct way, right? This is not a value error. This is a custom exception. We need to create some custom exception, right? So this is not a value error. We need something like invalid email, like this type of error, right? So how to create that? So for that, we basically create some exception file. So in the code folder, we can create one exception file, exceptions.py. So here, first what we need to create, we need to create one application level exception. That is, let's say app exception, which will going to inherit the Python exception, the code exception class of Python. And then here we need to write def init. Okay, so this is the init. So we need a message, right? So what message we are going to print, which is of type string, and then we are going, let me just only pass the message. So then we are calling the parent exception class. So in the parent, we are calling the parent constructor here, okay, to print the message. And then here we are storing the message, self.message equal to message. So now we are storing the message, so to display it in our style. So here we can write def, let's say we are going to use one magic method, that is the str method. Okay, so str method is basically, it will display the instance or the object in a string format or a user specific format, so the user can understand. Okay, so how we can do this? So for that, we need to write return. Now we can set our, like, how the format, in which format I wanted to display it. Let's say I wanted to display in this format. So it will be, let's say self dot, so for which class it's coming, then the name of the class. Okay, and then I need to show the message also. Then self dot message. So basically, from which class the exception is getting raised and what is the message of that exception. Okay, now I have created one application level exception. Now I will create specific exception. So how to create a specific exception? Let's say the first exception is the invalid email exception. So what I can write, class invalid email exception, and that is going to inherit our application exception, app exception. And then what? Nothing. Then we need to just write this init. Okay, and we are just going to pass this message to our parent class exception. Okay, so here you can give the message, or you can directly specify the hard code the message also. Okay, that is based on you, whatever you want. So let's say I can give here, so instead of message, here it will take the email. Okay, and I can say this is the message, invalid email address, that is the email. Okay, this is the message I wanted to display. Okay, and I'm doing chicken curry. Okay, I didn't get the context, but yeah, if you can explain, like in what regards? Okay, now since we have created this invalid email exception, now we are going to use this here. So what we are going to do then? So we are going to import that exception and raise it from here. So here we can write from app.core.exception import invalid email exception, and then I can write this one invalid email exception, and I can just pass the email here. Okay, so now let's go here and let me again give it a wrong email. Okay, let me clear this. Now see, it's raising an exception, right? See how this is coming. Let me know, friends, if you can see this or not. Let me see, this is the raise invalid exception. So we are getting the exception here, invalid email address. So what is the invalid email that we are getting? Okay, and from which exception we are getting that also. So this is how we are going to raise an exception. We will create one exception file. So in the exception file, we are going to create one application level exception, and here in the application level exception, we are going to define the format. Okay, in which format I wanted to display the exception, and then we will create different type of exception here. Okay, invalid exception, user exist exception, all these type of exception we will create here, and that we are going to use in different section. Then another thing, so for example, let's now quickly create another. So let's now uncomment this get all. Let's now implement this one there, def get all. So see, it's already given the suggestion how to do. Then here what we need to do, here we will return in a list format all the user, right? Okay, there is to return. So we are going to return all the users. Okay, what type base method returns type none. Okay, so see why, it's because it's returning none, right? So basically it should not return none. Correct, friend, because see, this get all, basically this will return some list, right? This will return some array. So for that, let me import the typing from typing import list. So it is going to return a list. That's why now in the user repository, see, it's not, it will not give any error. So now again, how to call this get all method? So in the user service file, let's create another service method like def get all users with self. Okay, any other parameters do we need here? What do you think? No, basically we don't need any other parameters here. So here we'll just return self. So from where we are going to call this method? From the repository class, right? In the repository class, that means the repo class, we have this get all. So this is going to return all the users from the data source. Now let's go to this main file. Now here let's create few more users. Let's get users. Max, Sam. Okay, let me correct this. Sam@gmail.com and John. john@gmail.com. Okay, so we have created 3 users now. Then we are going to see what are all the users. Okay, so what we are going to do, so let's say all users equal to service dot, so get all users. Okay, so it's going to return the list of users. So let's get all the users. Let me clear this. See, now it has returned all the user. This is the main file. See, this is the array, right? This is the user 1. Then this is user 2 with Sam and John. So we are getting all the users. So this is the whole flow of the object-oriented programming, friend. So what we have created? So we have created the core folder, which is containing the config file to read all the configuration related information. Okay. Then the exception file to handle all the exception in our application. Then a logger file. So this is going to log, right? So for example, it's going to log here. Then we have created one model class. In the model class, basically how the data structure will look like, that is going to store in our data source, and also some validation that we are going to keep in the model file. Then the repository file. In repository file, we will have one base repository, that is basically it will have all the method that needs to be implemented by the main repository class. So this is optional, friend. In many projects you might not use this, but this is a good practice. You should know this one. So here in the base repository, we are going to use some abstract class and abstract method. Okay, so this abstract method, this needs to be implemented by the child class, who is going to inherit this base repository. Then in the user repository class, this is the main class that is inheriting the base repository. So here we are just doing a composition concept. That means we are creating one data source, one value that is tightly coupled with user repository. Once the user repository object or instance is created, this is created, and once the object is or instance is destroyed, this is also destroyed. Then we are giving some methods that is basically based on the base repository, that here it will mainly contains the CRUD operation, that is add, delete, update, okay, all these type of operation. So here we are doing one addition operation, that is create operation, and a read operation. Okay. Then we have created one user service file. In the user service file, what we are doing, we are seeing the concept of this aggregation or a dependency injection, where we are taking what type of repository class we need, but this is going to be decided by the caller class, okay, who is going to call this user service. It's not going created here in this user service. That means it's lightly coupled. So this is like, even if the user service is destroyed, this user repo will not get destroyed. Okay. Then here we have created some of the methods. So create user, here it's going to call the repository class and going to insert the data. And also here, friend, we have also seen, we are raising like how to use the custom exception. We have seen one example here to create a custom exception. And then in the main file, so we have one bootstrap function. So this is the main function. When our user sends some request, this is the function that is going to execute first. And from here, it's going to create the service and do all the operation. So this is the whole flow, friend, of this object-oriented programming. Hope you understand. If any question, you can ping in the chat, or else we can close. And in the next section, we are going to see some advanced concept of Python, that is basically the decorator, then context management, all these type of things. And then we are going to start the FastAPI. So once you know every of this concept, so it will be easy for you to grasp the concept of FastAPI, or later on in any Python framework. Okay, friends, then I think there is no question. But yeah, if any question or any doubt, just let me know in the DipsCode group. Okay, in the DipsCode group, I will just ping you, or any like any doubt, I will solve there. Okay, so no issue. So okay, thank you, friend. Good night. So hope you have learned something from here. So we will see you in the next class. Thank you, friends.